Welcome to Chamber Chat, the business solutions podcast designed to help your company thrive. I'm your host, Charles Stannis. Before you buy most things, you probably have a general idea of what it will cost. But if you've spoken to a few web design companies lately, chances are there has been little consistency in the pricing of both design and development. So what gives? Stay tuned as we talk about what type of website is right for your business and exactly what that investment should cost you. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm sitting down today with Jennifer Coomer, Director of Sales, and Sydney Fahrenbrook, Digital Marketing Engineer from Atlas, a web design and digital marketing agency. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So what does a website really cost? When we break that down, we could probably talk for hours. But I think if we really sit down and focus on, what type of website is right for you and what type of website you're looking for, I think we can really take that question and break it out. So it's probably one of the most common questions that you guys get asked.
Definitely.
How much does this website cost? What can it do for me? So just elaborate a little bit on that and, how you guys go about kind of deciding what type of website is right for each individual business.
Well, when a prospect comes to us and they have a specific need, a specific, business, and they're in a specific industry, it all depends on all of the above, but also their budget, what their overall goals are, and just not only for short term, but long term too.
Mm-hmm.
And then marrying that together and finding the perfect solution for that individual and that business.
I think, like you said, it is a question, the most common question we get asked, and it's usually the first question we get asked when someone calls and is like, I need a new website or I want to redo my website, and then they say, well, how much is it going to cost?
Right.
And
it's kind of like the make or break right away.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And as in, any industry, there's, service industries, B2B, B2C, price is the first thing that someone's looking for. But for us, it's not something that's just, okay, this is how much it costs. We can't say a website is going to cost you $500, it's going to cost you $5,000, it's going to cost you $15,000. It's very specific depending on the business, the industry, and how much you want to put into your website. So that's why it's something that we can break down into extreme detail to tell you exactly how much it's going to cost depending on who you are. So
right. So let's look at that question a little bit, right? So we talked about the different types, e-commerce, B2C, B2B, it really depends on your business. Mm-hmm. So, if I'm a, one-shop guy and I'm just starting out and I'm selling a product, obviously my website needs are going to be completely different from a, fully furnished, 50 operation employee B2B business, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm great to talk about this because, we're in that transition where, we've kind of found what works for us in terms of how much are we doing ourselves and how much are we kind of having someone help us with. So talk to me a little bit about, that, because that's probably the number one struggle is, identifying, what a business actually needs, what they can do on their own, and what they can actually utilize someone like Atlas for.
So there's different pricing breakdowns based off of your overall needs. So there's the do-it-yourself approach, where if you're just starting out and you're a new business, I think the do-it-yourself approach is the most affordable, and you don't need that much experience either for a platform such as Wix, Squarespace, Weebly. What else is there?
WordPress, that's what we use, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And WordPress is one of the most popular content management systems, and I would say WordPress is more for, a business starting out. But I would say WordPress would be, the next step above a do-it-yourself approach. So you're looking at, if you do the do-it-yourself approach, you're looking at anywhere from $50 to $300 a month, cost-wise.
Right. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of plugins. There's a lot of, behind-the-scene things that start to add up. And, once you get going, you kind of realize, hey, this is nice. I need this too, right? So those costs do start to add up.
Correct.
So
once you start bringing in functionality into a website, that's when the price increases.
Gotcha. So you talked a little bit about, the most common websites, Wix, Squaresoft. What type of business do you see kind of aligns with those platforms best?
Honestly, it could be any industry, but I would say those individuals that want something quick, they want something, affordable, and something that they don't have to put a lot of thought into. Now, there's existing templates out there already where businesses can basically drag and drop. Mm-hmm. So as long as they have a brand identity and, a logo, all they have to do is drag and drop their content and edit the actual template a little bit, but there's not much coding involved. You don't have to be a web designer.
I'm guilty of that.
Mm-hmm. Which is really nice though, and I've used Squarespace, I've used Wix, and I'm not the web designer or the web developer at Atlas, and I find that Squarespace and Wix are extremely easy to use, and being that I don't have design or development experience, I'm comfortable in actually, going through the back end as well as the front end of these platforms. And I think that any small business should feel comfortable in doing that because an online presence is needed.
Yeah.
Right.
I think also a lot of those, DIY websites, if it, you're, like Jen said, it can be pretty much any industry that can do that. But if your website, you just need a couple pages, you just need to get your brand name out there, about us, maybe a service page, a quick portfolio page, and a contact page where people can get in touch with you. If you just need the very bare bones, something simple like that when you're just starting out to make sure that you have an online presence, I think that is a good place to start. When it gets a little more complicated, you want to be adding more content, expanding how much you have on your website, that's when you might need to take it a step up.
Right.
But if you, I even see people who are, just one, sole entrepreneur, maybe you're doing some kind of freelance work and you just want to have a portfolio online. That's a really good place to start with these basic websites because you might not have, as much time or money to invest in that. And it is, like Jen said, a lot of it is just kind of based on a template where you can just go in there, customize it, put your branding in there, put the content that you want to put in there. So anything where you just need a really simple website, it's a really good place to start.
Right, and I think you guys touched on it, usability, right? Mm-hmm. So with that almost drag and drop feature that's become common, a lot of people are able to set up shop, whereas I think before it's been much harder. So I think that barrier has been kind of easier to enter. I think once, whether it's an individual or a business gets to that certain level, that's when they need to start looking and adding the other features, right? So whether that's content creation, whether it's, SEO, whether it's pay-per-click, all those things, that's when I think they really need to kind of look at, hey, is it time to, transition into the next step? How much am I willing to invest and how much will it cost to kind of make those next steps? Mm-hmm. So from you guys, I know, some of the things obviously that you guys do best, and I know some of the things that you kind of go through with all your customers and all their websites is all the different, opportunities that come with an existing website. So, I talked about it earlier, the SEO, the pay-per-click, the content creation, the project management, the hosting, there's a whole list of things that, people start to have to worry about and take care of, to actually have a website that they can use to kind of, be a marketing tool for them. So talk a little bit about all those different things that, if I'm, someone who has no idea what a website is, I don't know what hosting is. I don't know what, the domain name is. Talk a little bit about that and how that can affect, the time versus money situation.
And a lot of people that are new to, the industry, the web digital space, they have no idea that a website actually, encompasses much more than just a website. And there's steps before you get to the website, and part of that is the domain name. Mm-hmm. And what is your business name, and then searching a service like GoDaddy to see if that domain name is actually available. And there's a cost associated with that too, and that
right.
can be anywhere from $50 to $100 per year,
depending on how common or how broad that name actually is.
Correct. And a lot of times, if that name is taken, you can actually reach out to the owner of that domain and actually bid or negotiate a price to take that domain over.
That's pretty cool.
And then, you know, once you have the domain name secured, that is when you move into, you know, the website itself. And once the website is developed, it's really important to consider hosting too. So where your site basically lives is the easiest way to describe hosting. And to kind of go over the cost associated with that, you're looking from anywhere from $50 to $1,200 a year. And again, there's thousands of hosting providers out there. But if you are using a professional company, a professional agency, more than likely they're going to recommend to host your website on their servers. So that fee, you know, will go up versus, you know, a standalone hosting provider.
Can you talk about the differences of those two? Like, what are the benefits of hosting it with your provider versus hosting it with, let's say, like a GoDaddy?
I would say just maintenance, daily backup. So you're looking at, you know, overall maintenance to the site and also, you know, daily backups of your site if you're hosting with a provider, so an actual agency. And just the support that's associated, having a dedicated project manager to ensure that your site's never going to go down, so there is no downtime. And then also what we include in our hosting package is 1 hour of support for any updates or changes the client may need. Now, I don't know if all agencies offer that, but that is, I would say, a benefit to hosting with an actual agency.
Right. I know that's something we've taken advantage of.
And you have a person, you know, if you're with not an actual agency, if your website goes down, you might not even know what to do or who to get in contact with.
Right.
You might be chatting with
might
some
take a
support
while.
bot. Whereas if you're with an actual agency, you could have an actual human being that you know that you can call.
You have that open
and
relationship.
say, hey, my website's down. What do I do? And they will have a conversation with you and, you know, figure out how to do that.
So, you know, if you don't have those technical skills to figure out, hey, why is it down or why is it slow or why is it not loading, then obviously that's where, you know, having a agency that, you know, hosts your website, that's obviously the biggest advantage would be at.
And a lot of times too, an agency will catch it before the client ever does. So more often we'll get the notification that the site is down. We'll take care of it, notify the client, let them know, hey, it was down for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. But more often than not, we catch that before a client ever does.
Yeah, they wouldn't have even realized that.
Behind the scenes magic, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
And we'll handle it too, so they don't have to stress or worry or, you know, take the time out of their day.
Yeah, which, as we all know, time is our #1 resource. So they've got a domain name, they've got it hosted. What's next?
And then after hosting, there's, you know, content creation. So once a site launches, if you're using a content management system like WordPress, you know, content is king. I'm sure you've heard of that saying repeated numerous times. And the flexibility is there with WordPress as the content management system to continuously add content, whether it's, you know, an additional page or if you have an ongoing blog. So I think it's really important that, you know, once a site is launched, there's still moving pieces to that website. And part of that is just content creation, overall project management, still ongoing communication too. So you're still communicating with your project manager after a site launches. You know, hey, let's add an additional page. Let's add some additional copy. You know, we just added a new team member. Let's go ahead and, you know, add that to the site. So the site is not static. It's always evolving.
Right,
always
it's dynamic,
moving.
always changing.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, content is huge, like Jen said, and I think oftentimes with creating the site, it's a very collaborative effort when we're, as an agency, we're working with the client, because sometimes we'll have clients come to us, whether it's a new site or they might be redoing the site, and they say, you know, we already have all this content we can use, but especially for smaller businesses where, you know, maybe they just have a few employees, they don't necessarily have a dedicated
Content writer.
marketing person who knows how to take whatever they have and put it in the right way to be appealing on a website. So a lot of times clients will say, hey, we have all this content, can you go through and optimize it? So we know how to put the right keywords in there, or, you know, put the right calls to action in
Which, if you don't know what you're doing, can take a very long time.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
for a lot of people, I know personally, you don't have the time to not do it right the first time.
Exactly.
Which is huge.
What do so many of this area's top executives and community leaders have in common? They're graduates of the Leadership Bonita program. I'm Tiffany Esposito, President and CEO of the Bonita Springs Area Chamber. Leadership Bonita is by far one of the best and most efficient ways to get engaged in the community and connect to a strong network of leaders. It's a community immersion program that offers a hands-on, behind-the-scenes look at all aspects of our area. More than 350 leaders in Southwest Florida are graduates of this program. Applications close March 6th. You can apply today at bonitasprings.chamber.com.
We even have one client, they are an IT company, so they're very technical, but they, didn't know exactly how to translate what they do. And we actually would call their clients and interview them and say, like, how was your, experience working with this company?
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up using that throughout the web content and be able to really reflect their services. So those are some things that you wouldn't want to take the time to sit down with your client as an IT company and say, hey, can you describe your experience working with us so we can write the content for our website? And we were able to handle that for them.
Awesome.
And then beyond that, it's just obviously writing content, also like images, do you want to use photography? Do you want to use stock images? We can search and find the right stock images to use on your site, things like that, all come together and making the website the best it can be. So
Right.
And training and testing go into that too. And once a site launches, well, actually, let me back up. Before a site launches, testing is probably one of the most important things before we launch a site. And that's included too, and just knowing that, your agency behind the scenes is actually testing the site, making sure that it can be the best that it can be.
Right.
And it's making sure that it's optimized and it's responsive on all devices. That's part of what we do in testing. And then once we launch, we actually take the client back and train them on how to navigate through the front end as well as the back end of the site. So that's part of, what's involved in a website project. And then of course, you can't just have a website and expect people to flock to that website. Mm-hmm. And a lot of clients think that, oh, well, I invested in this brand new website, it's a lead generating tool. Okay, well, yes, the site is optimized for, search engines. However, you have to promote that website and you have to invest in marketing, whether it's traditional or, digital means to actually send traffic to that website. So a lot of people always fail to remember that, you have to invest in a website, but also marketing to start generating the leads that you want to see.
Right.
That you expect to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's searching for questions, everyone's searching for solutions, so to make sure that when they're searching for those questions and solutions, they can actually find the website. So we talked about a lot of the different components that kind of break down how the site operates. So I know we're going back to our original question, what does a website really cost, right? There's a lot of different things in here. So estimation, approximation, whatever you want to call it, if you want to group it up into say, hey, if you're this type of business, if you're just starting, this should be your budget, because I know this is probably a question you guys get asked a lot.
All the time.
What
all the time.
What does that look like?
And I would say,
if you had to break it down.
If I had to break it down, we discussed the do-it-yourself approach. If we took it a step further and, say you did not have the time to do it yourself, because many small businesses do not have the time. They're focused on running their business, growing their business. So we always recommend a 5 to 10 page template-based WordPress site that's basic. So we refer to that as a basic site where, as Sydney mentioned earlier, it's a home page, about us, our team, services that we offer, or products that we offer, and then a simple contact us page. No functionality required, just a contact form and I would say social media logos, links that go directly to those channels. Nothing beyond that, so no complexity whatsoever. I would say $2,500 is your starting point. Now that's using an existing template, so an existing framework that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind that what is there is what you get. So there's limitations to what you can change in an existing template.
So you can, put your company logo, your colors, the pictures you want, the content you want, but the framework is pretty much going to be the same.
Right.
So it's a step up from that DIY, Wix website that you would build yourself. But as far as how it's going to look similar to that.
Right. Everything's kind of pre-templated, and you just start to get your identity basically from that website.
Exactly.
Correct. And you might have the same website, the same framework, the same layout as a handful of other businesses. The only thing that's going to be different is your branding, your content, and the photography that is used on that website. So a template, a lot of people get turned off by templates because they think, well, I don't want my site to look like everyone else's.
Just like my competitors, right?
Correct. And I want to be different. I want to stand out from the crowd. Well, then we recommend a custom approach. But with that, the expenses start to rise. So with the, basic 5 to 10 page site, you're looking at $2,500. The next step, I would say, again, using a template would be, if you need additional pages, more pages, and now let's start adding, some sort of functionality, some, plugins, custom plugins. So let's take a nonprofit, for example. Now, this nonprofit, they want roughly 25 to 30 pages, and they have a donation software that they're using. They have an event software that they're using, and they want the donation and the event integration completely custom with their existing site. So now that cost, which the site itself, let's say it's $7,500 for a template site for this nonprofit because they want 25 plus pages. Now you start adding those integrations and those custom, third-party software integrations that we're adding to the website. Now the cost is going to go up a little bit. Now it depends on if they're looking for a full-blown custom integration or if we're just adding a plugin, or if they have an existing software and we're not doing a complete integration, but it's just a link to this existing software.
Making sure the branding's staying the same.
Correct. Yeah. That pricing is different depending on what they're looking for and their needs. Now that price could be anywhere from $350 to $750 for those, custom integrations. So it's always important to ask to, what third-party integrations are you looking for? Do you, currently use any third-party integrations or any third-party software that we need to take into account for the website? So that $7,500 price point is now going up slowly.
Right.
Based on the complexity and also the integrations. Now, if that nonprofit does not want to look like every other nonprofit or their competitors and they want a custom site, now the price goes up from that $7,500 to roughly the $10,000 ballpark. Now the $10,000 ballpark is simply just for the custom design. And again, if you have any integrations needed, that's when the price increases.
So it seems to me the more customization that you have, the more plugins that you have, the more integrations that you add, that's where the small costs start to kind of build up from there.
Correct.
But we did talk about this earlier, cost versus time. If we look at a nonprofit, they might be spending $5,000 more up front, but in a year's time, they've saved hundreds of hours on their staff that can go right back to supporting their cause. So for some cases, you're spending more money up front, but it's giving you, all that time back, all that extra time that you would have to, whether it's solving problems or integrating stuff in, now you can completely focus on what it is that you're doing. So, I think, keeping that in mind as well is important, because I think people initially see this price tag and they're immediately thrown off. And I think, being able to factor in cost versus time and not really knowing if something goes wrong, if you're going with an agency, I think is something really important to keep in mind as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I think a huge thing that we face is when we present proposals and we present that overall cost, there's a lot of times that we do get a kickback. And, the individuals that are sitting across from us when we're presenting these proposals, they are a little bit taken back by the price, and it's just a matter of letting them understand, the time that is actually involved in creating these sites. A lot of people think, oh, I have this website, it's going to be super easy for you to do, it should take you 5 days. I mean, we hear that so often, and it makes us laugh inside, like, hey, I wish designing and building a website took 5 days, but it takes our team with, the communication that's involved, the testing, and, the design development, it takes roughly 6 to 8 weeks, and that's just for a standard basic website.
Right. So someone who, let's say they have a do-it-yourself right now, they have that basic website, they've just started out, and they're starting to get traction from there. And obviously when they start to get traction, their time becomes even more limited because, they're starting to grow. So someone who's on that fence, what do you tell them? How are you able to, give them the recommendation, whether it's, going with a template website, whether it's going that custom route, what's been the feedback there?
What I try to do, if someone has started out and they've taken that DIY approach and they're ready to move on to the next step, and maybe have an agency handle the website overall, and maybe they're not quite yet ready for a full-blown digital marketing package, but they just want us to, manage the site and also host the site. So one less thing they have to think about in their daily routine. I would recommend taking that website, transitioning from, Squarespace or, Wix or Weebly, and transitioning to WordPress, and also just a basic site using a template. So going from the DIY to a template, and just utilizing that template for 3 to 5 years, and see where your business takes you. And once you start generating revenue and you see a return after 3 to 5 years in business, that's when I think it would be really important to start differentiating yourself from competition and investing in more of a custom site, and just that allows you to stand out from the crowd. But I don't think it makes sense for startups right away to invest in a full-blown custom website. Again, it depends on their goals, their overall needs, but I think it's really important, start out with a template site. We can do minor customizations, and we can make it specific to your brand. And I just feel a lot of people, they get not bogged down, but they don't want their site looking like everyone else's.
Right.
And I think a lot of people who are in that position, maybe they're a smaller business, they've just started out, they have, a simple DIY site. That's a lot of people who we talk to who do ask this question, what does a website cost? Because they don't really know, they don't have a marketing person on their team. A lot of times they say, what does a website cost? And we'll kind of say, okay, well, what's your budget that you're working with? And we'll see, what we can do with that. And they're like, well, I don't have a budget. I don't have a marketing budget. I haven't set this aside. I haven't thought about it. So not that you have to, sit down and crunch the numbers before you start doing your research on a website and say, what exactly am I willing to spend? But think about it a little, how much are you willing to invest? And then think about, like we talked about, the cost versus time. So don't just think about how much you're willing to spend, actual money you're willing to spend, but think about, how much time am I spending on this? How many leads am I getting from my website, and how much, revenue is that bringing me? How much time would I save if I go to an agency, and kind of have an idea of that when you start to research this process. So when you go to an agency, you kind of have an idea of what it would be worth it to you. And then from there, when we have a price point, we can say, okay, you have, $2,000 to $5,000. We can see what we can do with a template with that. It's worth it for you to move away from this DIY approach and get a template website. So it's a good place to start, because not everyone thinks about what their budget is, but you kind of have to have an idea of what you're willing to spend to know if it's going to be worth it to you or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say, to chime in to what Sydney said, I would say 90% of the time when potential clients come to us, 90% of the time they do not have a budget in mind. And it's very important for us to actually have those numbers to present the best options of here's what we can do in the time allotted within that budget. Here's what we can promise you for that price. And a lot of times what I do is I go over in the very first preliminary meeting just basic prices. Here's starting points just to see if you're comfortable with what a basic website will cost, what a custom site will cost. If you have an e-commerce site, I'll give you just a starting off point just to kind of see if that is within their budget or if it's even something they're comfortable in pursuing. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to waste their time. Their time is very precious, valuable, and we don't want them to waste ours either. So it's really important knowing, okay, you have this idea, you have, these goals in place for this website, and how much are you willing to invest? And if you're willing to invest in, a website that costs, say $10,000 or $15,000, what if we could promise you X amount of leads each month?
Right. Yeah.
Then would it be valuable?
Absolutely, right? Well, I know we've covered a lot and I know we've talked about a lot. So if people have any more questions, where can they go? How can they get in touch with you guys? How can they follow up with any of this?
If you are interested in learning more about what was discussed here today, you can contact us at Atalus.com. So that's www.atalus.com, ATILUS, or you can call us at 239-362-1271.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Chamber Chat. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday for a brand new episode. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.